Welcome back, sports fans. This is Pastor Jer.
And I'm Pastor Joseph.
And I'm joined today by Pastor Joseph, my dear brother, which you just heard. So that's not really news, I suppose. That's neither here nor there. Dave, today, I'm glad to see you. I hope you listeners are glad that you're here. We're glad that you're here with us.
We are.
And, we're going to jump right in. Today's title is Formative Childhood. And because I want to put a twist on this, I'm not actually going to talk about my childhood. And I'm going to try to keep Dave from talking about his childhood, although he's been known to wax eloquent on his childhood from time to time. So if that happens, buckle in, you're going to be in for a blessing. But
yeah, in for a waxing.
And for and for a waxing. That's awesome. So here's my take on formative childhood. I was once a child. I am no longer a child. I sometimes still act like a child, and that's my problem. And everyone else has cross to bear. However, I now am a father. I have 4 kids. They're all above the age now of 8. And I'll be honest with you, I think more growing up has been done in my life since having those 4 kids than happened when I was a kid. And that's actually what I want to talk about today, is how being a parent has shaped me as an adult, how it has reflected back on and even healed some of the things that went on in my childhood that, for a long time were still festering, unaddressed, needing to be comforted, addressed, corrected, grown, strengthened, healed, the whole gambit. So that's what I want to talk about today.
So we're not talking about Jacob and Esau? That's what I thought we were talking about today.
Want to.
We're not talking about Joseph and his family issues or Jesus and his siblings that weren't fans and told him to get out on the street and go do your miracles. We're not talking about any of that stuff.
They liked it once he proved himself.
Why were you looking for me other places? You knew I'd be in my father's house. We're not talking about any of that. We're talking about, okay, yeah. Just making sure.
Yeah. Because, our listeners haven't actually lived in the Bible.
Okay.
They have lived their own experiences, though. And I think that there's a lot of overlap between their experiences and this topic. And I wanted to just add to that conversation. But so let's hear your pushback. Just get it all out. I'm a big boy. I can take it.
I'm done. I'm good. I just wanted to mess with you because I prepared for this episode and was completely wrong. So anyway, it's okay.
It's
okay. I love you still.
What had you
obviously
prepared?
Not the right thing. So I do agree that having people who need you in your life changes you for the better. I do agree.
Yeah, but that can be said about like pets.
No. I said people.
Goldfish.
Sorry, people. Did I say things or animals? No. I meant people. Because I do think we missed the mark if we only classified as our kids. I know for you and I, that's the easy thing. But I do think of spouses caring for their spouses as they get older, as they care for one another. And I do think there's a beauty in it, as well as you learn much in it. And that's why some of the maturity that you see in seniors, or the I don't care itness of maturity, because they have a different perspective. And so I do think our perspective has been changed.
I completely agree.
I think
there's something different, because I could say having people in my life when I was a kid, when I was a young adult, when I was in my early adulthood, that did in fact change me, but not nearly as profoundly as the past 13 years of my life having become a father. And I can't say for sure, but I'm going to guess, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, I think that with each kid that I've had, I've got 4 kids, you have 2. With each of the kids that I've had, the impact has multiplied exponentially. And what it has demonstrated to me is just how selfish a person I am. And it has necessitated, in a way that being a young adult with college friends did not ever necessitate. It necessitated me choosing every day to get up and put my desires, my ambitions, my preferences, not even in last place. Like I just had to box them up, put them into a treasury box somewhere, put them into a safety deposit box, and like bury that sucker and then pour concrete over it. Like this has ceased to be about me in a way that is comically extreme. And wrestling with that, wrestling with the putting to death of my own desires, not only is that a huge battle, but that's a crucial turning point in my life in understanding what my place actually is in the world. Why am I here? What am I here
And so
to
my
do?
challenge for
What's my
you
life for?
is that I know your heart. And so I hear you. My challenge for you is that I know not everyone does that. Not every parent seeks to live in a way that is seeking to keep God first, their kids before themselves in light of, what God is doing in their life, as well as recognizing that their children allow more of their weaknesses to be seen so that God might be glorified. Like that's not what many people do.
I agree. That's not the norm, but I think it is the norm that the fact of having children does in fact put that challenge in front of us. It necessitates us to walk through that gate, if you will. What we do as we walk through that gate, once we have walked through it, that's a totally different story. That gets down to, how am I going to orient myself? Am I going to choose to live this way, or am I going to go back? Am I going to say, hey, you know what? Actually, this really sucks. I really like getting my 8 to 10 hours of sleep. I really like being able to stay up until whatever time I want. I really like not having to worry about safety issues. I really like being able to eat whatever I want, whenever I want. I really like not having to put my knives away. I really like being able to have alcohol in my house and not care about who sees it. I really enjoy being able to speak whatever and however I want to whomever I want, and not be concerned about censoring myself for the good of others.
Yeah,
That's what I really, really want. And that's a choice that each of us make. But I'm saying that's a choice that we make every day.
I know there was an article in the Washington Post, it's had to have been at least 3 months ago now, where there was a parent who had written into one of the, I don't even know what you call them. They had written a letter into the Post to get reflections or to hear whether it was okay for them to not do the things that we're talking about, because they felt that they had been, in this case, they had been cheated because they had had kids later in marriage and all of their friends were in a different stage.
Okay.
And so the person who wrote the letter was trying to find out, is it okay for me? I don't know if it was a male or female, but in the article, it made it clear that the person was in love with the child, but also did not want to lose the time with friends, didn't want to lose the time for self, didn't want to lose the time to do things again in that stage. So I don't remember the article talking about what was in that stage, if they were closer to midlife, they wanted to buy a car or go on a vacation or whatever, but it still made it clear that their friends were in a different space and that the individual or individuals were not happy with their current situation. And so out of that, I do think there's an opportunity to be better. I don't think it's something that if you came out of a family where you weren't cared for, I don't think that's an easy opportunity to jump into, even though that's what we're called to do as family. That's what we're called to do as children of God. And so when you talk about the families that we have, they do impact the way we look at how we care for one another, just as
they do.
Just as you have an opportunity to redefine your relationships and to care differently. And I think that's what we're talking about now. Like, you have that choice to sacrifice and to say, this is love. This is a part of love.
I agree with what you're saying. But I do think I would say it a little bit differently. Yes, we have a choice to sacrifice. And yes, I have a choice whether or not to punch you in the face when I see you on the street. But I have a responsibility to not do that. I think it's more than just a choice. I also think it's more than just experience. I think that who we are as people is proven by these kind of life experiences. The life experiences that require us to radically subjugate our own desires for the good of someone else for whom we're responsible proves the kind of people that we are. And I will be so bold and possibly wrong as to say that I think it does demonstrate where there are people who are oriented properly and people who are oriented wrongly. And I know that it's not popular or acceptable to give a moral sounding statement like that in our society today, but I'm okay with that because I think that reality bears out. I think it's true. You can have from the same family a horrible experience of parenting, and you can have in the family across the street an experience of extraordinarily good parenting and childhood, and you can have a child from both of those houses who both say, I'm never going to do anything the way that my parents did. And the other one who says, I want to do the best I can and better than they ever did. And I'm going to improve on everything they did because they did so well, or they laid such a good foundation. And it's hard for me to negate that and say, well, there's a best way to have a childhood, or there's a best way to be a parent, or there's a blank slate that we each come into this with. I think that our personality is formed. And I think what we're faced with is the question, who am I going to be? And why am I here? And in light of what I'm responsible for, am I going to attempt to mitigate my responsibilities because I have desires I want to fulfill? Or am I going to delay the gratification that I want to receive in order to care and to carry out my responsibility for these little humans that I have charge of? And I think it is wholly insufficient to look at some sort of evolutionary explanation, say, well, children make us feel happy. That's why we do it. There's a utility to raising kids because they make us happy. No. I think researchers that say that have either not spent or have completely forgotten the weeks and months of sleeplessness, the years of anguish, raising these little bratty, snot-nosed, self-entitled, arrogant know-it-alls. I'm not doing this because at the end of the day, my kids come into my room and say, I'm the joy of your life. And when they do come into my room and say, I am the joy of your life, it's because they have a cold and they got snot dripping on their face and they smell like poo. And I get to hug them and go clean them up. It is not about the joy that they bring me. It's about the fact that they have value because they are a part of me. And I've been granted a very short period of time to help them become the kind of people who can sacrifice themselves for the good of others. And that's a hugely important calling to me. And I think that's a hugely important calling within humanity. I think without that calling in humanity, civilization crumbles. And I think it's that way because that's the way God designed it. I think it just happens to work out that way around us because it's in line with the way God intended for family and for life to exist. But again, I can certainly get up in the morning and decide, well, I don't care. Get your own breakfast, go to the store and get your own food, go out, find a rake, rake someone's yard so you can get some money to go buy some milk. Because I don't care.
And that's why I say it's a choice. Like love is a choice. There is a consistent part to choosing. Yes, there is the responsibility. Yes, there is the God expectation. And yes, there is an impact on community based off of you doing your part to love your child well. I do believe one of the issues, and I can talk about this because it's more recent in my world, is when you have parents that differ on how best to love.
Sure.
And so if I've got a couple who view things differently, one is a Republican, the other one's a Democrat. One is save every microbe PETA member, and the other one is an NRA gun toter. Like, I mean, literally two different ways of looking at the world, and yet both love.
The sex must be amazing.
Well, these are real people. That's the funny part. I'm thinking of it in my head.
I believe you.
And yet, they're trying to raise their kids in a way that gives them the freedom to be themselves, and yet the recognition that there is a calling on your life. There is a a work that God wants to do. And as you started us off, and he is also working in both of us as your parents.
Right. Right.
And so I make this statement / question because I do think, yes, our children play a huge role, but I also think our spouses do as well. And yes, it's different because they don't look like us when we get married, but they do after a decade or two.
Right.
Which is always fun.
It is.
And
am I looking through a filter?
Pretty much. It's like, when do we start looking like siblings? Or when do we start looking like a pair?
So what's the difference between polishing and grinding?
The finish.
There it is. How long you go. I think you're right. I think our spouse is an integral part of the process here that I'm describing as the formation. Yeah, childhood has a formative impact. Being married has a formative impact. I think that the fact of being a parent has, in fact, a higher impact than being a spouse does. But being a spouse is huge. Having a spouse is incredibly impactful. I think it boils down to the same thing, though. Not only does it polish me, not only does it grind me to knock off my jagged edges, but in the case of this couple you're talking about, the question I have is how do they work through expectations and discipline for their kids? Because I have to imagine that there is some distinctiveness in the way that they view appropriate discipline.
Yeah, there definitely is. I don't know. I do know another couple.
Well, see, but that's where being in that relationship, that is its own grinding. That's its own polishing. Because I came into marriage having a particular idea of how parenting should go. My wife came in with her own idea. And as we started trying to work this out, darn it, I knew my idea was right. And darn it, she knew my idea was wrong. And the longer we went, the more we could see the result of the choices that we both made independently of each other, in concert with each other, and the results they were having. And it had the effect of challenging not just how I choose to be, but the fundamental assumptions I have about how the world does in fact work. It necessitated my going back and thinking back through practically all of the foundational ideas I have about life. And that's what had that formative impact on me. And yeah, it was not just screwing up with my kids. It was also screwing up with my kids in front of my spouse who was like,
I was about to say that. My kids can punch me in the gut harder than anyone when it comes to their words, not their actions, but their words. Because they can see things and go, yeah, why'd you do that? And it's like, yeah, no good reason. I was being selfish.
Yep.
Daddy's broken too, and now he needs to go pray. And one of the things I enjoy about praying with my children at night is, I don't enjoy this part, but when I know I've goofed up and I need to ask for forgiveness, and then they typically look at me and go, what'd you do today? Like,
that's none of your business. You apparently thought we were in a confessional.
Like, your prayer was different today. What did you do? You were asking for forgiveness. And so it is humbling. It is a vulnerable relationship, as you stated earlier. It is one where they know your faces. They know your ticks. They know when you're being foolish, as well as when you...
They know your gripes. They know the things that will tick you off and set you off.
And they look like you. And you're trying to teach them not to be like you.
And then all of the worst things that you have ever said in private, they say like 100 times worse in public.
So be fruitful and multiply. No.
I guess I would say this.
This episode is
the humility that you're talking about. This humility that you're talking about is, I think, what God's after. You know, Scripture says that God, He lifts up the humble, but He resists the proud, right? The polish isn't possible unless we first go through the grinding. I always wanted to be a mature adult. Don't know why. I'm talking like Christopher Walken now.
I was curious.
But I do a lot
so curious.
of audio editing, and now I realize this is a thing that I do. Sorry. That squirrel just ran. Yeah, my encouragement would simply be that. I think the polish really does look beautiful, but you don't get it without the grinding. The grinding sucks. When my favorite dessert comes out on my birthday, and there happens to be more kids than there were supposed to be, and that means there's not enough cake to go around, it should be me who says, no, you guys have it. I'm good. You enjoy it. That sucks. When I'm eating soggy bread, because you don't like your bread with the jelly touching the bed, sorry, that was not directed at you. Didn't even think about it until I was saying it.
I don't like, for those who are listening, I don't like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. It's just that simple. I like a peanut butter sandwich or I like a jelly sandwich. I do not like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So there you go.
I was going to text you yesterday. I had a PB&J, but it was with apricot jelly. And it was on brioche, which was...
That's a whole different sandwich.
Anyway, it's a whole different sandwich. It's a whole different sandwich. That's like a donut with peanut butter.
That's a whole different thing. That's not a PB&J. You just took out the J. You said it was apricot.
That's right.
There you go.
That's right.
Another random squirrel moment brought to you by marriage. Eat fruitful and multiply.
Thank you guys for coming by. We have left you with a hot mess. Enjoy it. Pass it on. It's called parenting.
Woo-woo.
We'll see ya.